I don't see Girish or Benna. Oh, there is Girish. They're here. They arrived on time. And so with that, I will call Cities Association of Santa Clara County Legislative Action Committee meeting to order at 6 p.m. Auden, can you please call the roll and establish quorum?
Yes, Gibbons.
Here.
Gibbons present. Paul.
Here.
Paul present. Blankley. Or, I'm sorry, Leroy Munoz.
Leroy Munoz is here. Thank you.
Leroy Munoz, thank you so much. Flagger.
Here.
Flagger present. Mock. Mock is absent. Rennie or Sayak.
Sayak is here.
Sayak is present. Montano. Montano is absent. Elahi.
Present.
Elahi is present. Constantine. Constantine is absent. Kame.
Here.
Kame is present. Glad to see you could make it. Bert.
Here.
Bert is present. Jones.
Present.
Jones is present. Watanabe.
Here.
Watanabe is present. Willia. Willia.
Present. Sorry, I was mute.
No problem. Willia is present and Larson.
Present.
Larson is present and with
Auden,
Well,
Councilmember Mock from Los Altos Hills joined us.
okay, thank you very much. I'll
Present.
record that. Mock is present and with 13 members present, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Auden. Next, we will move to the consent item, and we only have one item there, and that is our minutes from our last meeting in February. Unless we have questions or comments, I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve, Jones.
Second, Gibbons.
Thank you. Auden,
All right, I will call the roll. Kame.
Yes.
Kame, I. Mock.
Yes.
Mock, I. Willia. Willia.
Aye.
Willia, I. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, I. Bert.
Yes.
Bert, I. Watanabe.
Yes.
Watanabe, I. Paul.
Yes.
Paul, I. Gibbons.
Aye.
Gibbons, I. Elahi.
Aye.
Elahi, I. Larson.
Aye.
Larson, I. Leroy Munoz.
Abstain.
Leroy Munoz abstains. Flagger.
yes.
Flagger, I. And Sayak.
Yes.
Sayak,
I just-
I. And did either Montano or Constantine join?
Yeah, I'm here. Aye.
And
Okay, great.
Constantine's here. I'm assuming we're voting on the minutes.
Yes.
Then I will register an I vote as well.
All right, great. And with 14 ayes and 1 abstention, the motion is adopted. I see one person named Ron who is raising their hand.
In the,
Yes, and I don't believe that we took comment for this.
so we can take comments on the attendee side. I don't see that hand, Auden, but I'll have you unmute that person. I don't see the hand on my end.
Okay, I don't
I-
see it anymore. Also,
Okay.
I had the notification that they had raised it previously.
Well, let's check to see if anybody has public comment on the minutes, on the consent agenda item. If members of the public would like to comment, please raise your hands.
I see that Ron did put in the chat that he would like to be unmuted, so I will try doing that and see if they are here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ron, you will be unmuted. You have 3 minutes to speak if you'd like to speak.
Ron, are you? Go ahead.
No.
Ron, are you there?
Yes.
Please go ahead if you would like to make public comment.
Enemy is about
Maybe a spam
Okay, let's mute that person.
blast. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks, Auden. Okay, so I don't see any other hands raised for public comment. So let's move to item number 2, which is the energy and decarbonization related legislative landscape and issues. And we have Silicon Valley Clean Energy CEO Girish Balachandran and the Government Affairs Manager, Benna Chang, to present this item. And I want to welcome and thank them because as many of you remember, we had to continue this item the last time. So I'm so happy that we're able to make this meeting. So Girish and Benna, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Flagger. I'm Girish Balachandran. I know most of you, so it's great to be back here. For those I haven't met, glad to meet you. So I'm just going to spend about 45 seconds setting the stage a little bit, and then Benna is going to do the rest of the presentation. So big picture, we have a climate emergency. You all know that. So from an electricity and energy side, we're looking at the state transforming to a clean grid, but that needs to be balanced with reliability and keeping the lights on. We cannot have blackouts like we had in August 2020. And we need to keep rates affordable. So those are the real key items. And we at SVC are focusing on electricity, transportation, and buildings. And transportation and buildings are where most of the rest of the emissions are. Electricity, since the year 2000 in California, has been the largest contributor to reducing emissions. And so now it's a time for transportation and buildings. And what we have ahead of us, and I think a PowerPoint is going to be shared on the screen. We're going to talk about funding opportunities at the federal and local level, decarbonization and local policy opportunities. So there's a bit of a setup for both what's going on now and what's coming up. So with that, I'll hand it over to Benna to take you through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you. Is everybody able to see my screen? Sorry, I had some technical issues. Okay, perfect. I was frozen there for a while. So thank you so much for inviting us to come and present today. Really excited to kind of talk to you about some of the really amazing things that are going on at the state and federal level, and also some local opportunities. So on the federal side, I'd like to get started. We just wanted to acknowledge that there was some really great work that was done last year by Congress in passing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Some really exciting historical investments here around climate change, particularly around clean energy transmission, and also a lot of funding for EV infrastructure that we're really, really excited about. Obviously, I think there is still continues to be a lot of work to be done. You know, we are still crossing our fingers that some additional reconciliation package will get passed by Congress this year. I was on a political briefing this morning and heard that there is a little bit of hope on that front, given some of the positive noises that Senator Manchin has been making recently. And I think the war in Ukraine is also putting a highlight on just the need to transition from fossil fuels and do it very quickly. So we remain committed to helping Congress and seeing what we can do to kind of advance those investments at the federal level. On the state side, I think there's a lot of alignment. The governor is also really signaling that climate is a top priority for him. He had his state of the state this week, and climate change issues were front and center in that speech. And he was really demonstrated that by putting his budget proposals together and having a focus on climate change investments at the state level too. So On this slide, we just highlight a couple of really interesting, exciting things the governor is proposing. The top 3 are around clean energy and really helping the industry kind of get ready. For example, offshore wind is a developing technology that is a big focus for the state. Some of the funding will go towards making sure that those projects are ready to compete and will be market ready. And then also on the bottom here, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that are really investments from the state that your constituents will see or that will come to your cities potentially. One that we're really excited about is the building decarb funding the governor's proposing. This includes consumer rebates as well as no cost direct install of electric appliances, weatherization, energy efficiency projects. I think will make a big difference for especially existing buildings and getting them decarbonized. And then there's additional EV fueling infrastructure grants that we're very excited about. The focus from the governor is really low income neighborhood infrastructure. And then finally, the governor's proposing $419 million for community-based and sustainable community strategies. So these are really funds for communities to figure out how they want to address clean mobility options, sustainable and equitable transportation projects, et cetera. So that's also very exciting to see. Coupled with that, I think the legislature is also very much focused on climate change and wants to do more and continue California's leadership on climate change investments and ideas. And the session is still fairly new. So at SBCE, we're continuing to look and analyze a lot of the bills that are out there. We wanted to just put 2 bills up for your discussion today and for your awareness. One is AB 1814 by Assemblymember Grayson. This is a bill that SBCE's Trade Association, CalCCA, is sponsoring this year. And it really would allow CCAs like SBCE to become program administrators for the CPUC's Transportation Electrification Program. This is a program that the CPUC runs that collects funding from ratepayers, and it goes towards funding a variety of EV programs, from EV infrastructure to electric school buses, et cetera. And this is a space where many CCAs like SBCE are putting in a lot of investment into electric vehicle infrastructure, incentive programs, and it's something that we would like to be more involved in at the state as well. The other bill that I wanted to bring to your attention is SB 833 by Senator Dodd. This is a bill that he tried last year, it didn't pass, so he's back this year, but really is state grant funding for all of local governments to develop and implement community resiliency plans, and some funding to explore expedited permitting for distributed energy resources. So again, this is another effort where the state is looking to do some very targeted investments to help local jurisdictions move forward climate change mitigation programs. And then finally, just very quickly wanted to highlight that there are also some very exciting local decarbonization policy opportunities that are coming down the pike for this year. Many of you played a key role in the past in the policy that to adopt REACH codes a few years ago to really advance electrification for new construction. And there's an exciting opportunity this year to adopt or re-adopt REACH codes by October to continue that good work from a couple years ago. I'll note that Morgan Hill and Campbell are exceptions. My understanding is that you've adopted those through ordinance, and so those do not need to be re-adopted this time around. So SBCE will be providing model codes and technical support and grants for our member agencies this time around. And we're happy to answer any questions. I know Girish is scheduled to come back to you to the full Cities Association in April to talk more about this as well. So with that, Girish, I don't know if you have any closing remarks or anything to add, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Girish and Benna. This was excellent. And if you were following the Cities Association earlier this year, this is definitely one of the Cities Association's priorities. So because this is not an action item, I'm going to open it up to our panelists for both questions and comments. And then we will go to the public for public comment and then close this item. So I see we have Councilmember Leroy Munaz. Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you so much. First off, Bennett, it's great to see you again. Another wonderful old work colleague of mine. So great to catch up and see you again. With regard to SB 833, the community resiliency plans, can you share a little bit about the fate of that bill last year and how things might look differently legislatively this year?
So I understand that that bill was held back mainly because of lack of funding resources last year. This year, the state, I think, is again facing even more of a record surplus. So there might be additional funding that is out there. And again, I think there's some positive movement in terms of, again, the governor's real focus on climate change activities. And I think you can see in his budget proposal too, that he also wants to partner with local government to kind of move things forward. So I think this is one where we felt like we wanted to support the senator in that request again this year.
Perfect. That makes a lot of sense. And I think the budget is certainly more optimistic with regard to a program like this. So thank you, Bennett.
Thanks, Peter. Mayor Burt.
Hi, thanks for a great presentation. First, can we get a copy of it sent to us? Thank you. And second, as you know, we're a municipal utility like Santa Clara, and so we in Palo Alto are seeing kind of some of two different lenses of the challenges. And as we're all moving toward electrification at different paces, we're running into the need for the workforce, for not only the direct install of moderately easy to train workforce, but then moving up the chain there to the our utilities and the need for high voltage line operators, and then above that, the professional engineers in power engineering. And what we are seeing is that for a number of years in those latter two categories, and especially now in the professional engineers, we have been unable to be fully staffed. And there has been just kind of a bidding war for a limited supply of these professionals. And we're understaffed before we all begin the process of a massive electrification where our utility systems have to be rebuilt to a great degree to accommodate double or more the amount of electricity that we're providing, not just the state grid system, but locally. And we have nothing going on that recognizes this as what I've come to believe is maybe the most severe choke point on the horizon, that all of our electrification programs may come to a grinding halt if we don't address this. So I've already spoken with Josh Becker and Mark Berman about it, and they're in Mark in his higher education subcommittee role and Josh in his energy and subcommittee. They're really in great position to help carry the ball on this. And they're interested, and we're going to have a meeting in the next week or so to try and get something off the ground. I say all that to try to enlist both you folks and this whole group on this issue. And Chappie had asked me to identify any prospective initiatives as a follow-up for our climate change. And in addition to the ones that you've presented, this is one I'd really like to put out on the table. I'm deeply worried that yes, conversion to a clean energy society and electrified society is going to create great job opportunities, and we make those arguments, but actually what we have is a job crisis on being able to implement the electrification to the extent it needs to be. It's a big transformation in our electric utility systems.
Mr. Bennett, thanks, Mayor Burt. Do either of you want to respond?
Yeah, I'll just say, I think you've hit a lot of the issues, and it's not one size fits all, but I think, working at it at the legislative level and the local level, it all makes sense. I've worked for utilities that were vertically integrated for many years, and you're hitting a very strategic issue, and there are some solutions. I think municipal utilities have certain constraints that can be removed. But I think so that's the local kind of changes one could make, but also at the state level, and what you said about electrification, things like heat pump water heaters, right? How do you train plumbers to get that? I know one of our board members, Director Elahi, is quite interested in that from some recent experiences too. We are launching a Future Fit Fundamentals program. Our SVC board has directed us to provide $500 for free training, 5-hour online training on decarbonization technology. So we'll actually pay contractors to take that. So we've just started with a soft launch about a month ago, and it's going to be open to all contractors in our service area. Again, it's just going to be a small piece.
Yep. So I agree with you. That's an important piece, but it's much more solvable. We can transition those installers, whether they be plumbers or electricians, to heat pumps in months. We have got a 4-year program for professional engineers. We have only 2 universities in the state that offer these programs, Cal Poly and Cal State Sacramento. And there is presently no plan and no funding to drastically expand that capacity. So we have challenges at every stage, but the big one and the most neglected one is the one with the longest lead time and pipeline to get them on board. And that's the one that nobody's talking about.
I think that's a great point. We'd be happy as SVCE to partner with you on this and work with our board to get something together.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor Burt. Vice Mayor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Benna, it's wonderful to see you. We miss you in San Jose, and I'm trying to figure out how we can steal you back. So it's great to see you. My question is about PCIA fees. So San Jose Clean Energy, we're getting hammered with those fees, and it's really causing our program to have some financial challenges. And so my question is there a strategy or a desire to try to come up with some legislative fix on the PCIA fees, or is there a path forward to how we can address them?
Yes, great to see you, Vice Mayor. So you might remember that the Cities Association took a support position on SB 612 last year. This was a bill by Senator Portantino that would fix the PCIA for us and really make sure that there's ratepayer equity between us and IOU customers. So unfortunately, that bill didn't make it through the Assembly Energy Committee last year. However, it is not dead yet. It's an active bill and made it over to the next House. So this summer would be the next milestone for it to make it out of that committee. And it just so happens that the Assembly Energy Committee got a new chair. So the reason why the bill didn't advance last year is the chair had some concerns with the bill. Now there is a new chair of the Assembly Energy Committee. So we feel like there is an opportunity to continue to have a conversation on that bill. And at least from SVC's perspective, that is still a top priority. So working very closely again with Trade Association, CalCC on this bill, and really want to try to have continual conversations about it.
Great. Thank you. That was it.
Thank you. Director Elahi. We can't hear you, Javed.
Yeah, I was trying to find my unmute button. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the comment Mayor Pat made. And the problem, I think the education, providing more education obviously is going to help. But it looks like this is going to be a systemic problem in that we have traditionally relied upon getting people with skilled people from overseas, and that immigration path has been cut off. So I don't know what we can do about it, but I suppose that may ultimately, now we need to get plumbers and other individuals that are already skilled from overseas to come in and help us out, because this is all over the place. I mean, there's job shortages and not enough people to fill it. So I don't know what we can do about it, but I think that's really a very important comment, and we need to multiply our resources in that respect.
Great point, Javed. Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you, Nisa. Yes, I just wanted to add on to what Mayor Burt had talked about. He had mentioned that Santa Clara also has its own municipal utility. And I agree with his comments, about the education and being able to have enough, employee staff, to, as, more cities take on, this, the ability to have their own public utility like this. I was going to just add that NCPA, National Northern California Public Agency, which Palo Alto is a member of, as well as Santa Clara, might be another resource to work with in terms of education and making sure that cities have the ability to be able to hire people with the background to be able to provide the services that cities are going to need to expand. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well, and maybe it's something that I could bring up with Silicon Valley Power as well, and see what maybe there have been discussions out there that we're just not aware of, but maybe SVCE also has some maybe some ideas about that as well. So those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
I may just mention something, Councilmember Burt, Randy, and Councilmember Watanabe. Randy Howard, the general manager of NCPA, in his previous role as in LADWP, he and I actually had been to Washington, D.C. to talk about this. So he is intimately familiar with the workforce issues. And this was before decarbonization really was taking off. So he would be a very good resource to tap into too.
Thanks, Girish. So I don't see any other hands raised from our panelists. So Auden, let's see if we have any comments from our public.
I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, then I'll bring it back to the panel. We already did questions and discussion. So of course I want to thank Girish and Benna. Just based on this discussion, it's obvious that this is something that there's interest in working on. And so we look forward to having you come back to the full Cities Association board so we can delve in more and see how we can partner together. But thank you both, very informative. And Girish, you can tell many people miss Benna.
Yes, completely. And I'm sorry that you may have to continue missing her because we have her.
Thanks, Girish. Thanks, Benna. So let's move on to item number 3, which is Assembly Bill 1944, which is the Brown Act Modernization Bill proposed by our local assembly member, Alex Lee, who I think is here. And so I see him over on the attendee side. Auden, oh, there he is. Hi, Alex. So Alex, we had someone from Supervisor Cortez, Senator Cortez's office at our last meeting talking about their proposal related to modernizing the Brown Act. And of course, I think you beat them to the punch, and we were pleasantly surprised to hear about 1944. So welcome. I will turn it over to you. And panelists, this is actually an action item. Alex?
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Assemblymember Alex Lee. I have the great pleasure representing Northern Santa Clara County and Southern Alameda County. So I'm crossing over counties as well. So I am bringing forward Assembly Bill 1944. This bill actually follows our bill AB 339 from last year, which actually passed the 2 houses of the legislature and would have modernized the Brown Act for the public participants. But that was unfortunately vetoed. So we are now coming back with 1944 to actually increase digital participation, much like what we're doing right now, for the elected official side and the public. The basic framework of the bill is this, is that we are creating an opt-in program in which case local Brown Act bodies can opt in to the to these modernized practices, in which case the public can now teleconference in. But the trade-off is now that the local electeds can also teleconference in without disclosing their private address, which of course we've seen is a really big problem as the pandemic has persisted through these years. So instead of having to post your personal address or post your address anywhere like that anymore, and for security reasons, you will not have to do that. Why it's so important to do this now while we still exist in the Zoom verse is because frankly, we are proving that it can work. This is especially helpful for special districts or large bodies over a geographic space. This can be helpful for the participation of course, local electeds who, of course, have their own busy lives, childcare, etc., or immunocompromised still, which is still unfortunate reality. That this can be a great tool for folks. And again, this is an opt-in program. So this is not, this is what folks would opt into if they had a majority of their body agree to. And this is a teleconference. And also just importantly, I know there might be some questions about it, but we don't change any of the mechanics about what teleconferencing is. It's still you call in or digital access, whatever it may be. But this is an important process to bring in more access and equity to not just the public, but also the electeds. And we're seeing so much success right now in the hybrid meetings and digital meetings across the state where jurisdictions of all sizes and types are still opting into this. But we want to make sure that we are availing ourselves as many options as possible. So that's why 1944 is something I'm proposing, I had worked on. And I always say the funny thing is I've become a bit of a Brown Act expert, even though out of the many body of the great folks on here, I've never been subject to the Brown Act. But I really want to work and modernize to make it all work for so many folks across California.
Thank you, Assembly Member. So let's do questions for the Assembly Member, then we will go to public comment and come back for discussion and a possible motion. So please raise your hand if you have a question for the Assembly Member. And I can get us started. Alex, I'm curious, I know it was recently introduced and it's still early in the process, but have you heard of any groups objecting to any portions of 1944? Any concerns raised so far?
I have not heard of any groups per se that are objected to this. I mean, certainly this is where the balance of the opt-in program is. There are some folks who feel public service, you should always be available to dais, you should always be there in person. All right, I mean, I agree to disagree on that one, but this bill at least allows it. If you serve on a body that feels we should always be in person, you should always be there, that's all right. You can choose to do that. But this gives a flexibility to other entities. You know, certainly I think the pandemic has challenged some of those notions of what access and what participation looks like nowadays. But some of that kind of lingering thought is out there, and that's why it'd be really helpful to have your support in there and say, this is a viable pathway. This is something that we can have a great option for local bodies, and it would be really helpful.
Assembly Member, any questions? Councilmember Gibbons. Liz, you're on mute.
Never fails. Hello, Assembly Member. Thanks for working on this. I know there's a lot of details involved, and I don't know how detailed you've had a chance to go. One of the big questions was how to establish quorum. Have you been able to sort through what the quorum is?
Yeah, great question, Council Member. So we do not touch the definition of quorum in our bill, so it would still be in the existing definition of how you establish quorum. Yes, we don't change the quorum rules. So
yeah, you might want to just check on that, because I haven't read the actual language, but I know there's a challenge with, is it quorum? If you're doing it in person, do you have to have an in-person quorum, or is it a quorum of the jurisdictional area?
It's quorum of the jurisdictional area. So no matter where you are physically or not, well, you are physically, whether you're there in the chamber or not, it still can establish quorum.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Vice Mayor Jones?
Thank you, Chair. And Alex, good seeing you. First question is, where's the governor on this? If he vetoed your original bill, is there a concern that he's gonna veto this one?
There's always a concern with, well, I have to be careful how I word this diplomatically. There's always the chance of a veto, right? There's always a chance. And we do engage the governor when it is appropriate. They don't weigh in early, but we have engaged with them again since the last time. Because this is still upholding, in my opinion, the spirit of his executive order that gave the flexibility to local jurisdictions to waive Brown Act requirements. And this time, I think with your support, we can go in and have a united voice, and hopefully we will get it signed. But I think the legislature, we have a good path. It's about convincing the governor. And I think that's why I spend much of my time kind of working grassroots on this level. And hopefully we can all convince the governor together that this is a great idea. This is a great modernization effort.
Okay. And then the second question is, if a city opts to not have the remote participation, does that mean that the public also will not have remote participation? It would be all in person for both elected officials and the public?
That's true. So it's still within the local jurisdiction's decision of how they want to do it. I mean, theoretically, you could, I think there are jurisdictions out there that basically provide hybrid to the public still, but don't do that for them as flexibly for the members. So that's within your right as well. You could also choose to have it more one-sided, but it's still within the decision of local jurisdiction. And also, I would just say of the governor, he did sign AB 361, which of course, under the state of emergency, allowed everyone to have more flexibility digitally. But I think this is striking the right balance about moving forward after the state of emergency.
Okay, and then the last question is, how can we support you?
You could definitely support by having a strong endorsement and also bringing up to the League of Cities and all your other counterparts like the special districts. Truly, if we have a united coalition of our local governments of all the type of different associations, I think this way we can really bring the attention to the governor and say it's a great idea. We also have, I think my staff can get it to you, but there also is a way for individual local electeds, if you want to support the bill, is really, really helpful. And throughout the whole process, having your testimony and your support is going to be really critical.
Great.
Thanks,
Alex.
Vice Mayor, I may come back to you for a motion after public comment. Councilmember Elahi.
Thank you. It's good to see you, Assemblymember Lee, again. Is there flexibility? I mean, I know there's an option of either opting in or out of your bill, but can we customize it a little bit more, like insisting that people can call in, but they must be in the jurisdiction, rather calling from out of state all the time? Some people have residences in other states, or they may be living in Tahoe all the time. Can we customize that based on that we need everybody to be at least in the jurisdiction or at least in the county?
Are you referring to the elected member of teleconference inside the country or the public?
The elected member. So I'm trying to figure out if yes or no, you either opt in or opt out, or is it we can take some of your suggestions or the bill itself and then customize it appropriately?
I mean, yeah, as of existing law right now, an elected member could teleconference from anywhere as long as there is a jurisdiction. As long as there is a quorum within the jurisdiction. Right. So we want to make sure that you are still able to have the option teleconference. But of course, if a majority of you all left for Hawaii, you would not have the quorum to even allow for this anymore, and you wouldn't even have a meeting. So we would make sure hopefully, we're trusting in local electeds, obviously not to abuse this, but in current law right now, there is no limit on teleconferencing when it comes to any location.
I understood. I was just trying to figure out whether we can customize it or whether it's going to be either accept your bill or opt out of it. So,
right. And I think that's definitely one of those concerns we want to bring up, right? We don't want abuse of this. And certainly I think that's within how you all, when you opt into, want to engage on these ground rules. We certainly don't want a whole quorum everywhere suddenly all over Nevada, right? Well, then you won't have quorum, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's got some very useful provisions in there. So thank you for doing it.
Of course.
Councilmember Mott.
I just wanted to make a comment. It's not a question, Alex. Assemblymember Alex. I think that the reduction of our carbon footprint is very important. And I think that the amount of time it takes for us to travel from one location to another location is also very important. And the invent of the hybrid meeting is the third issue here, which is also very important, so that if we can use this more often, we can ourselves reduce our usage of electricity, as in our previous comments. We can reduce our time on the freeways and reduce some of the congestion. So I don't see in the last 3 years that we've missed out on anything in having hybrid meetings. So those are just my comments.
Couldn't agree more.
Stanley. Councilmember Larson.
Thank you. Thank you, Assembly Member Lee, for your leadership on modernizing the Brown Act. I think it's high time that we do that. I have a comment that probably doesn't apply to the cities in this association, but may apply to some of our smaller special districts in the area who currently are not set up for live streaming. They may not have their own regular meeting facilities, may not have a reliable internet connection, but do occasionally have members who dial in by telephone today. And the way the bill is currently written, it would just having a member dial in by phone would then trigger the video and live streaming requirements in this bill. So that actually means in those cases, those districts can't hold the meetings as they do today. So that's, I know it's a bit of a corner case, but I have heard that concern raised by some of the smaller special districts that I think essentially would mean no teleconferencing at all for them, because they wouldn't be able to comply with the video and live streaming part of this. So, if there was some way that they could continue their practices today, maybe they still publish the address of the people teleconferencing in, and thereby not trigger the new provisions of this, that would be helpful. But I do acknowledge this is probably a small number of agencies that are affected by this. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good point to bring up about small agencies, and that's why we want to make sure that it is an opt-in, right? So if they don't feel they are equipped to do so for the public or themselves, then they don't have to. The second thing is also what's important about this is we are just changing kind of the noticing requirements and the requirements for the public, but not so much how we define quorum and teleconferencing. These are existing ambiguities of the Brown Act, a law created in the 50s before we had the Zoom created, right? So these are kind of live time gray zones we're exploring, and certainly always happy to refine these areas of policy. Because the last time I think we even updated the Brown Act really meaningfully was just for social media almost half a decade ago or a decade ago at least. So a lot of the gray zone when it comes to teleconferencing and quorum, I don't think was built for this era in mind. And certainly these are always good, valid things to think about, but I certainly don't want us to exacerbate these issues. But I think from my legal interpretation, the gray zone kind of is on our side, but of course can always use some tweaking and clarification too.
Thank you. Mayor Walia.
Thank you so much, Chair Flagger. And thanks a lot, Assemblymember Lee, for bringing this forward. I have a comment from Saratoga and a question that I thought of as Mayor Elahi from Montessorino was asking you about possible abuse. So the comment is that in Saratoga last year, we decided, even when we go back as the council and commissions meeting in person, we have made the hybrid option permanent for members of the public, so that they can come in person. We are still not there yet, but when we are in person, they can come in person or dial in or come via Zoom to give their comments. That gives them all kinds of flexibility, whether it's young families with little children. I've seen them spend hours waiting for item number 4, which could show up at 8 p.m. or 10:30 p.m. And as well as for seniors. Saratoga has a large population of seniors. So I am very proud to say that's one challenge we don't have. And so it's great to see the modernization of the Brown Act on that front, that the state is coming forward with that. And of course, as a Saratogan, I feel good that we are a little ahead of the curve on that tiny little regard. I have not read the AB 1944 as has been written, but the other part I do appreciate. I'm hearing two things today. One I just commented on, and the other one is giving flexibility to the elected body, the Brown Act body, to be there in person or be there remotely with not with keeping their privacy. So the question is, as Mary Lahi just asked, the possible abuse, I'm asking the question, possible abuse from, not intentional maybe, but if there are large members of the public from, say, not just outside the jurisdiction, outside the state, or in the day of social media, if there's an issue on, say, our council agenda, somebody from, say, Australia chimes in and they get 100 people right there. What it's impacting, it's almost filibustering our meetings. Is that going to be accounted for? How do we deal with that?
Sure. First, I want to give a lot of credit to City of Saratoga. Thank you for doing the hybrid options, or what you can of the hybrid options right now. I think while there are a lot of resource discrepancy between large and small jurisdictions, I have been very surprised by small school districts and cities who have deliberately and voluntarily opted to do it themselves already. So that's really amazing to see. And I would just say, Senator Cortese obviously is working on a bill about public disturbances, which he came to talk to you about last week. So I think it might dovetail nicely with what you're talking about. But when it comes to, say, large amounts of people teleconferencing in or calling in from outside of jurisdiction, it's certainly in an ideal world, we hope that people have the most attention in from within the city of Saratoga or within the county care about it, right? But I don't know if this is something technologically or legally feasible to enforce, where people call in from across the world. I think it's one of those realities of modern technology. But at the same time, right, you could never stop a busload of people from Australia either, right, if they really wanted to do it. So I think it's one of those, there's great equalizers of technology, but one of those things we have to be careful of. But I just, to be honest, I don't think that's something we legally can enforce. But I think Senator Cortese's bill helps in that regard with the most egregious examples, at least.
Okay, that's good to know. I only thought of that because of the question asked earlier and the fact that we have had tremendous attendance from the community because of the remote participation as an option currently. And we are seeing the positive results of it so far. A lot more input, maybe not always what we want to hear, but it's good to hear from every single person. So thank you very much for all your work on this.
Of course.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't see any more hands. So Auden, let's see if there are any members of the public who would like to comment on this item. So I don't see any hands, Auden. So I'm going to go back to the panelists and I will entertain a motion. And again, for new members to LAC, we actually make a motion to recommend to the full Cities Association Board to approve, well, not approve, to support, oppose, or take no position on a proposed bill. And so that would be the motion we would be making. And then I would bring it forward to the Cities Association Board. And so Councilmember Montano?
Yes, sorry for the delay. I was trying to find my hand, to raise my hand. So I do like this bill, Assemblymember Alex Lee. We before you came on board, we were just talking about climate change and our carbon, how to reduce our carbon footprint. And this is another way that we can do that. So I really do support this bill. I think it's really great that you're doing this. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Carmen. Councilmember Kamei, do you have a motion for us?
I do. I think we're ready.
You're ready.
All right. So I'd like to move support of AB 1944. Thanks.
Second, Jones.
Perfect. Thank you. So Auden, let's take the roll on a motion to recommend to the full board to support AB 1944.
All right, I'll fix that later. All right, I will now call the roll. Gibbons.
Aye.
Gibbons, aye. Burt.
Yes.
Burt, aye. Watanabe.
Yes.
Watanabe, aye. Elahi.
Aye.
Elahi, I. Constantine.
Aye.
Constantine, I. Paul.
Abstain.
Paul, abstain. Larson.
Aye.
Larson, I. Mock.
Yes.
Mock, I. Laromnios.
Abstain?
Laromnios, abstain. Kame.
Yes.
Kame, I. Valia.
Aye.
Valia, I. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, I. Montano.
Aye.
Montano, I. Sayok.
Aye.
Sayok, I. And Flagger.
Abstain.
Flagger, abstain. With 12 ayes and 3 abstention, the motion carries.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Alden. Thanks, Assemblymember Alex Lee. And if you don't attend the Cities Association board meeting, we'll send you an email tomorrow morning to let you know the outcome of that vote.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. So because of the time, and I know President Jones, if we were in person, he would come over and say, we need to move to the full boards meeting. We do have our next speaker, Melanie with Cal Cities. And part of this presentation is really to let us know, tell us what to expect in 2022. And then at our next meeting, we plan to start tracking all the bills on our agenda. And so Melanie is here, there she is. And so I told her I would give her 2 minutes to just do a quick overview of what to expect. We'll take 1 or 2 questions, and then we do want to close so we can transition to our next meeting. So Melanie, thanks for joining us. This is just a quick preview.
Not a problem. Let me see how quick I can do this. First off, I just want to say it's great to be here with you this evening with all of the local officials. We're so grateful for everything that you do on behalf of cities and the work that we get to do with each of you. I also just want to give a special recognition to Councilmember Kamei, who is a board member for the League of California Cities, and it's great to see her here tonight. Since I am truncated for what I can present on, I quickly just want to go through 2021, I just want to talk about the fact that we've had a lot of success last year, especially in the budgetary realm. We look at what happened at the federal level with $8 billion in direct funding for cities for California, along with the $1.2 trillion, which is so crazy to say, trillion, for the infrastructure law that was passed by Congress, which we anticipate that California is going to get probably at least $50 billion. So a lot of opportunities there that happened in 2021 that we're looking to capitalize on 2022. For 2022, just really quick, Cal Cities has taken action. We have created our action agenda for this year. Our 4 buckets that we're really focused on, and should not be a surprise to any of you, we're focusing on more funding to increase the supply of housing and the affordability of housing. We're looking at investments to strengthen and sustain critical infrastructure. We're looking at resources to prevent homelessness and assist those experiencing homelessness, and improving collaboration and resources for disaster preparedness, resiliency, recovery, and to address the impacts of climate change. So looking ahead, just want to highlight a couple of things for you that are going on at the Capitol that we're very much engaged in. There's so much in the housing space that could probably take up a whole hour, and unfortunately don't have an hour. I do want to go and highlight that recently our Executive Director, Carolyn Coleman, did an op-ed for Cal Matters that is highlighting the work that city officials are doing every day to increase the housing supply. I strongly encourage you to look at that, and we can make sure that we provide the links so that can be shared out. Really big deal for us. Some of the big things that are going on with so we have housing, and that continues to happen. We are also taking a look at, as an organization, putting together a menu of strategies that we can propose to reform state laws impacting cities in the area of land use. That is an ongoing effort this spring that we are continuing to work on, and we will have more to report out on later this year. With housing, there's also an interesting nexus happening in Sacramento right now with climate change and how cities should be involved in climate change. So not only is there, Sacramento is really pushing on how does housing, how do cities address housing within each of our communities, but now also looking at how about climate change? How do cities get involved with greenhouse gas emissions, and what can they do to address that? So that is something that's really interesting for us that we are really diving in on. There's nothing more to report on that right now, except that it's very top on our radar of what we're working on. Additionally, COVID-19, there's certainly additional efforts within the legislature to look at mandating vaccines, whether it's employer-based or school-based. Those are things that we're continuing to monitor. We've not taken any position in that space. Another thing I do want to highlight is Proposition 47. There's been an effort to look to reform Proposition 47. The legislature actually took up a bill this week that would have repealed that proposition. It would have put it to the ballot for voters. That did not pass out of committee. But I think what we're seeing, and our board is also doing this as well, is what are those alternative strategies we can do to help people who are potentially high risk to become, to get engaged in these types of activities? What are different ways that we can look at that we can help as cities to make sure that we are really addressing criminal justice reform? I also want to highlight one more thing before I turn it back over, is we also engage in ballot measures, and we do have a measure that is particularly concerning for cities. And I want you to be aware of this, that it's sponsored by the California Business Roundtable. It's currently being circulated for signatures. Ultimately, the measure will tie our hands when it comes to raising revenues, both at the ballot box and through our local fee setting processes, and therefore threaten billions of dollars in local revenues each year. So something that is high on our radar. We are opposed as an organization, and our regional rep, Seth Miller, can easily get you more information about that and what your cities can do in that space. With that, I hope I met kind of the 2-minute threshold, and I'm available for any questions.
Excellent, Melanie. And as I said, for each LAC meeting going forward, we will have each of these bills for us to delve in more, discuss, and vote whether or not we want to take a position. But that overview is very helpful. Any questions? I said we'd allow for 1 or 2 questions. I'll go with the first hands raised. I don't see any, Melanie, but please don't go. Let's go to public comment to see if we have any members of the public who would like to comment. I don't see any hands there either. So back to the panel. Any last comment for Melanie? And I see no hands. So Melanie, thank you. We will be in touch. And as I said, we will bring you back for more specific bills. But thank you. Okay, next on our agenda, announcements or requests for future agenda items from panelists. Mayor Paul.
It's a very quick request. I understand the time is short. Can we go over how we choose what legislation gets voted upon for support by this group? Because I would really have liked to have considered Assemblymember Berman's bill last week, and for that matter, last year. So I'm just wondering how this one got, selected for that, and whether maybe we can reconsider that process. Thanks.
So it happens one of 2 ways, Darcy. So either the requesting representative. So for example, Assemblymember Berman really just wanted to have a discussion on his bill, whereas Assemblymember Lee wanted support. So a lot of times the request will come from the representative. As we go forward, you will see, and that's what I said at the beginning, we're actually going to include a running list of all the bills that we think impact our Santa Clara County cities. And so any member of this committee can ask to agendize that bill for discussion and possible motion. So those are the 2 ways we normally bring bills forward for a vote.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. I would like to see that decision made internally as opposed to kind of externally, requested or imposed upon us. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Gibbons. Mute, you're on mute.
I would look forward to having the meeting next week with a list of bills that we want to track, and ask that all cities who have any kind of legislative action group identify any pieces of legislation that they would like to be addressed. I've put some information in the chat, and there's some humdingers out there that I'm hoping by putting them all on the agenda, we'll have the opportunity to speak to them as appropriate.
Liz, and that's been our practice, and I plan to continue doing that. So we can pull it if someone wants to pull it and take action. Mayor Walia?
Thank you. Very quick follow-up question. Did I hear from Liz meeting next week or was it next month?
I think she meant next month.
Great, thank you. And can you email us the list, please? Otherwise, I'll frankly lose it somewhere.
Right.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tina. Okay, I don't see any more hands. President Jones, I still have 1 minute. We have the informational item and we do go to the public to see if anyone would like to comment on items not on the agenda. Okay, seeing no hands raised, I'll bring it back. Thank you, everyone. We will adjourn the LAC meeting. This is the same link for the Cities Association board meeting. So stay on if you are a board member. President Jones?
Thank you, Chair. We'll give everybody a couple minutes so that we can transition over and then we'll start our meeting. Yeah, I think we are transitioned. So I'd like to call the Board of Directors meeting to order. And Auden, can we take a roll call, please?
Yes, Bybee.
Present.
Bybee present. Paul.
Here.
Paul present. Lero Munoz. Lero Munoz. Appears to be present, but maybe he's taking a break. We'll check back later. Flagger.
Here.
Flagger present. Mock.
Present.
Mock present. Sayok. Sayok is currently absent. Montano.
Here.
Montano present. Elahi.
Present.
Elahi present. Constantine.
Present.
Constantine present. Abakoga. Abakoga is absent, or no, she is present.
Hear me? Huh.
Can't hear you.
Oh.
In any case, we established Abakoga is present. Bert.
Here.
Bert present. Jones.
Present.
Jones present. Watanabe.
Here.
Watanabe present. Walia.
Present.
Walia present. And Klein.
Present.
And Klein is present, and we'll go back to Lorraine Munoz,
Present.
who is now present, and has Sayok joined?
I'm here.
Okay, great. We have 15 members present and a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. We will now go to public comments. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak at this time? And I don't see any hands raised, so we are going to go to closed session. And for the members of the public, we have a half an hour allocated to closed session, so hopefully we'll meet that time allocation. And so we will now convene to closed session. So I will lock the meeting.
I just want to announce significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 of subdivision E3 of Government Code section 54956.9. One potential case, allegations of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. It's one matter. Conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation.
Thank you, Gary.
Yes, and so we ask all members of the public to please leave the meeting for closed session and rejoin in 30 minutes when the open session will commence.
Thank you. So I will now lock the meeting.